Empathy fucking hurts. It's exasperating when someone declares themselves empath. First of all, I'm sorry, there is no such thing. No, there is not. And just because it's now a pop psychology buzzword, and just because it may end up in Oxford's, doesn't make it so. That's a Star Trek pun, by the way. One is either empathetic or not. One has empathy or they don't. It's not a pathology. I don't know if it's learned or innate, and I don't care. Empathy hurts. It fucking hurts. It's the stinging smack of keisaku. Not reminding, demanding you sit up and be present. It fucking hurts. My sister is a breast cancer survivor. I'd call her more than a survivor. She's a hero. I know them when I see them. They aren't who you think they are or what you were told they are. Which is how I know a hero when I see one. It's like art or porn. My sister was lucky with her recovery. She had a surgical cure. Whew, I hear you thinking. Isn't that great? Of course it is. Yet the path to get there required 3 very invasive, very debilitating body-changing surgeries. In the middle of COVID. And as a Vonnegut novel would have it, my sister and her husband both were hospitalized with COVID shortly after her initial cancer diagnosis. And so it goes. It was the holidays when they went into hospital for COVID. Pneumonia, both of them. The virus would leave its mark for the long haul. I agreed to feed my sister's cat every other day while they were hospitalized. A friend came by to feed the kitty in between. We had just fed the cat when Kathy called from the hospital. She was being released. It was Christmas Eve. There was no tree or lights that year. No one gave a damn. To be honest, it was a pathological relief not to have any of the usual holiday baggage. Thanks, COVID. They released my sister. We were instructed to keep the windows of the car open on the way home. Dispel that COVID air. I didn't want to leave my sister home alone on Christmas. She was fine with it. Just wanted to lay down and snuggle her cat, Christmas be damned. She would text and call her husband, then have a good night's sleep at home. He would be back home by the new year. Her resilience and sense of self shocked my heart. And so it goes. Lumpectomy first, then reduction both sides, and finally mastectomy of the breast where the cancer was discovered. The typical 4th and 5th surgeries would have been reconstruction. 1 surgery for a temporary stretching implant, 1 for the final implant, because even when you are 60, the body still compensates for what is lost. Hey Terry, talk about your physical reaction to your sister's telling of what she felt physically and mentally after each invasion of the healing process of skin and tissue, sometimes delayed and inflamed, the physical discomfort of sleeping because of the inconvenience of, drains, stitches, swelling, and then finally the amputation. And our talks about how her body was reacting and how she felt pain that wasn't exactly pain but something missing. The clinical term is phantom pain. Remember where that hit you? In the gut, where that stuff surrounds your lungs and heart and stomach. Never forget the clenching inward jerk that you couldn't identify as each wound your sister shared yanked your viscera inward protectively. Exactly who were you protecting? Remember when you talked with a friend who was more than a peer, a teacher with gritty hooves planted deliciously into the nitro-humus of being, and she said clearly, like birds chirping at dawn, that is empathy. What I had felt, what I had experienced wasn't about me, it was about us. Our attachment. No, typo, our bond. And so it goes. End of summer in 2009, Smith was clearing out the carport when he called me on my cell phone. I was in the house, and he asked me to come outside and see something. It sounded urgent, so I walked out the front door and was confronted with a little, mostly white, calico kitten. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 weeks, and she was already making demands. I brought her in the house and took her into the kitchen to eat some of Icky's canned food. Icky was the great-grandfather cat who would eventually teach the twins how to hunt and kill properly. Jeff called me again. He said, "There's another one." They were mostly identical. Mostly white, tiny calicos with markings on their faces, ears, and tails. As soon as I saw the two, I knew I had to come up with names for them. Smith called them Ruination and Catastrophe. He was worried about his vegetable garden. Funny how he didn't feel that way about the 2 feral cats, the 2 pet cats, or the bird that already occupied the space in the backyard Emirates. After a week or 2 of trying to place them, Jeff finally accepted the fact that the kittens weren't going anywhere. To be honest, they were never going anywhere. I think we both knew this. I ended up naming them Castor and Pollux. I had read somewhere that the original story of the Gemini twins came from Egypt and that the twins were female contrary to the Greek mythology. This is probably bunk, like everything else on the internet, but it was the excuse I needed to keep the names. Castor was always the more assertive and dominant of the 2. Pollux seemed to seek out Castor's approval. Their playing would end up fighting a vicious sorting of autonomy. Sibling rivalry. The dynamic reminded me of my sister and I as we grew up. At about age 3, Pollux went out the cat door, never to be seen again. I suspect the neighbor's dog got her, or maybe a coyote. We will never know. Castor is now 15 and living with kidney disease. I have to perform what I call poke and water the cat. Subcutaneous hydration, 100 milliliters 2 to 3 times per week. It's not a heroic measure, and this has little to do with my attachment to Castor. It's palliative. I am committed to giving Castor the best rest of her life. Period. Yes, I am a compassionate killer. We aren't there yet. And no, I won't use the pretty terminology just to make you feel better about it. Some days the process is fairly easy and painless. It all depends on Castor and the drugs I give her for comfort and my level of confidence. If all the portents come together, it's an easy poke through her loose skin in 5 minutes most. The first time I couldn't get it all to come together in a somewhat painless manner, I cried for an hour. The guilt for not being able to get the jab right the first time without Castor hurting or getting distressed gave me a psychic pain. Not a woo-woo, airy-fairy, avocado toast psychic pain. This was a moral and ethical pain. A defeat that I had let Castor down, fractured our bond, our trust, which created anxiety about the uncontrollable, and realization that my intention and love isn't enough. It is a hard reminder that I must move past myself and work with Castor on her terms. Regardless of how I feel about getting it done or poking myself with the hypodermic needle. And so it goes. Empathy fucking hurts.